Hello everyone, Vangeris here, and today I'll be taking you through Skyrim while talking about anything and everything on our way to becoming the most knowledgeable mage in Skyrim. As previously mentioned in this series, we'll be tackling different parts of Skyrim's questlines in separate videos. Here's a reference for when we're tackling what. One point I need to make clear is that the first 10 videos in this series are focusing on the walkthrough aspect, where I show you the game while throwing out opinions and criticisms as we go. These sections focus on showing and explaining the content more so than critiquing every aspect of it. We'll dive into a heavy analysis of the game in the final video, so if you're expecting more analysis during the walkthrough section, you may find it lacking. That's intentional, so I ask that you be patient while I work on the final part of this series. It's looking to be a monster of a video, as I plan to take my previous commentary analysis sections and kick it up to 11 with just about everything found in this game, especially on the story side, as that is where the bulk of Skyrim's content comes from. But let's get back on track. As I hinted at earlier, today we'll be tackling the College of Winterhold questline and several of the features that questline holds. Timestamps for each quest and section in this chain can be found in the description, as well as my critical analysis playlist where you can find the rest of the Skyrim series once they're all uploaded, along with my other analytical content. Finally, feel free to leave a comment with your stories, opinions, and criticisms as this goes on. I'm sure you've got a lot to say about this one way or another. It helps me iron out the kinks in future videos by letting me know if I get anything wrong, word things poorly, or generally suck at something and need to improve. I welcome the comments and criticisms. Now let's dive into college life. We'll begin by creating the perfect organism for magic, a High Elf. High Elves, or Altmer, whichever you choose to call them, are the best race for magic as they possess an increased magicka pool, 50 points above every other starting race, and their racial ability, Highborn, increases magicka regeneration by 2500% for 60 seconds once per day. That already gives them a large advantage when dealing with spellcasting and recovery, along with a boost to the starting perk levels for each magic tree, but we'll go over magic and how it works in a moment. For now, we'll greet our golden boy, Magical Maculion, as he fights his way out of Helgen. We'll burn our way through Imperial red shirts before looting the armor and gear in one of the prison cells. We'll equip the Novice Hood and robes for an increased magicka pool and regeneration. With this, we'll have a basic setup ready for magic domination. One of the perks of being a magic user is that spells don't take up any space in your inventory, so you have every spell in the game at your fingertips whilst looting everything in sight. This is one of many boons that magic users gain, but we'll go over more of them throughout this run. Getting back to Maculion, we'll escape Helgen and head to the Mage Stone to take our already incredible magic skills to new learning heights. We'll head into Riverwood to sell off most of our gear. Even though we use magic, it's a good idea to keep at least one melee weapon on us in an emergency, specifically when we run out of magicka for whatever reason. We'll also chop some firewood for Hod so we can have a little gold. Then we get bored and head for the ever-present Dawnstar Chest of Wonders. As we work through the loot and other skills, I'll explain some basic aspects of magic usage in the game. As we know, magicka is the source of spellcasting, with each spell costing a different amount of magicka to cast. Some spells are a one-and-done situation, or are a continuous drain on your reserve. Either way, balancing your magic usage to accommodate your battery life and regeneration rate is advisable. This means that it might be better to use a cheaper spell than a more powerful but demanding one. We'll see some of these as we go through the run. Another factor in magic runs involves the gear you use. Like any character, we can enchant items to boost regeneration, reduce certain spell type costs, give additional bonuses, and so on. Given that, some of the best magic gear in the game doesn't count as light or heavy armor, so you'll gain no skill bonuses when using some of your gear defensively. This is important to keep in mind, as you are a magic user who will probably dump most of your levels into magicka and a little into health. In other words, you'll be powerful but squishy, as per most balancing choices in games with magic. That's not to say you can't play with a heavily armored lightning-casting maniac, but it'll take some time and resources to get to that point. All of what I just mentioned impacts the way you play as a mage. You'll usually want to keep your distance and keep spells handy in your favorited slots for easy switching, as you never want to forget to heal. Spells are also versatile and restrictive at the same time. On one hand, certain damage types are effective against certain foes, but on the other, some magic types are weak to others. Case in point, most humanoids and animals will take increased fire damage, but a frost troll won't blink if you shoot an ice spike at it. Each element also boasts a bonus effect. Fire leaves lingering damage as the target burns, frost reduces the enemy's stamina and slows their movement, usually, and shock drains magicka from the target. Each are effective in different ways, so adapting your strategy to each scenario will depend on remembering the strengths and weaknesses of each type. The most important aspect of magic use is managing your reserve and expenditure. If you overuse magic against a target that shocks you afterward, you'll have a hard time getting that magicka back without potions, or some other effect. This also plays when fighting tougher enemies that soak up all your damage and still keep coming. This is why I advise keeping a melee weapon on you at all times for emergencies. It never hurts to have your arm there when your brain drops the ball. That's enough magic babble for now, so let's get into the College of Winterhold. As the name implies, you can find the college at Winterhold. It's famously the remaining structure after sinking everything around it way back in the day, but we'll go over that later. For now, we'll meet Feralda at the entrance, where she says we will not gain entrance unless we look to join the college. We can ask her about this place, and she'll call it a safe haven for mages in Skyrim, and a place of wisdom and arcane knowledge. That first part hints at the Nord prejudice toward magic and those who use it, which makes sense as the Thalmor and the Aldmeri Dominion used magic a lot to beat the Empire down during the war, as well as the Nordic folk being of the brawny weapon swinger's persuasion. Back to Feralda, we can ask her if we may enter the college. She says perhaps, but asks what we would find within. You can give various answers here, with some pertaining to quests you have that take you into the college. See the main questline video for a reference. But we'll go with the intellectual answer of unraveling the mysteries of Aetherius. Feralda references Aetherius as the immortal plane and source of all magic before acknowledging that what we intend is a noble goal. Then she says the college may have what we seek, but then questions what we can offer them. Not anyone is let in, as we must show some magical skill. You can persuade your way through this if you're lucky enough, but the test Feralda administers is simple. She'll mention the Mage Light spell is useful to any mage, and asks us if we can cast one on the seal on the ground behind her. If we don't know the spell, she'll offer to sell us the tome for it, or mentions us talking to various court wizards around Skyrim. We'll buy the tome and use it to learn Mage Light. Tomes are one of the more gimmicky parts of magic in the game, going with the thematic element of reading a book to acquire knowledge that we can use for spellcasting. We'll also grab some spells from Feralda and the other mage to give us some options for spellcasting, as well as learning one of the bound weapon spells that spawns a weapon in your hand for a limited time. These are useful for getting the conjuration skill up, as well as whatever weapon skill they happen to correspond to. You can summon one-handed weapons, two-handers, and a bow, making it a unique skill. The drawback is you can't customize their damage or enchant them, outside of the conjuration skill tree of course. So I tend to use these spells in the beginning until I find a weapon, or make one that is suitable per our magic build. Moving on, we'll cast Mage Light on the altar, and Feralda will compliment us and explain that she'll lead us across the bridge, and we'll be told to talk to Mirabelle Irvine, their master wizard. You have to interact with Feralda in some way to enter the college, as the gate past her will be shut until appropriate measures are taken. We'll enter the college grounds and find a skybeam shrine in the middle of the courtyard. We'll get a tour soon enough, but we'll catch Mirabelle arguing with Ancano, more on him later, where he asks for the reasoning on a decision. Then Mirabelle explains that he may be used to the Empire bowing to his every whim, but the Thalmor receive no such treatment here. He is a guest at the college, courtesy of the Archmage, so she hopes Ancano appreciates the opportunity. He says he does, and their conversation ends. We'll see more of them both throughout this questline. Now we'll introduce ourselves to Mirabelle, who says she's surprised at how many new students there are lately. She'll give us a set of gear for a magic user, plus some random boots, and mentions a tour before our first class. We'll take the tour and follow her around. She'll explain that the college has been a fixture of Skyrim for thousands of years, and the prominent feature is the Hall of the Elements behind her. It's their primary location for lectures, practice sessions, and general meetings. The Arcanium is located above the hall, and the Archmage's quarters above that. While the Archmage is in charge of the college, his responsibilities keep him occupied. This is why Mirabelle runs the day-to-day operations. Then she'll show us our living quarters. Along the way, she'll mention the college implementing more stringent entry procedures due to some problems with the local Nords. They don't anticipate violence, but it never hurts to be prepared. Then she'll lead us over to one of the other towers, the Hall of Attainment, where the newest members are housed. She'll ask us to keep our voice down while inside, as others may be working on research or delicate experiments. Once inside, Mirabelle will direct us to our room, where we may do as we please, but she asks us to be considerate of others. We'll head back to the Hall of Elements, as she says we'll initially be learning from Tolfdir, one of their most esteemed wizards. Mirabelle will tell us to go inside, as Tolfdir is likely addressing the new apprentices now. She says if we have any problems to let one of the senior members know. Then we'll head to class. We'll find Tolfdir with the other students in the main area of the Hall of Elements, as they are just beginning. Tolfdir begins his lesson by stating the first thing to understand is that magic is, by its very nature, volatile and dangerous. This will be a recurring theme throughout this chain. Then he says if you cannot control magic, it can and will destroy you. One of the apprentices will chime in, Brelyna, who says we all understand that, as we wouldn't be here if we couldn't control magic. Tolfdir says we all certainly have inherent natural ability, and that is not being questioned. What he's talking about is true control and mastery of magic. He says it takes years, if not decades, of practice and study to achieve this. Then another student chimes in, Jazargo, asking what we're waiting for, and says let's get started. Tolfdir says this is exactly what he's talking about. Eagerness must be tempered with caution, or else disaster is inevitable. The last student, Onmund, chimes in to say that we've only just arrived, and they have no idea what we're capable of, so why not give the students a chance to show what we can do? Tolfdir then turns to the player, saying we've been quiet, and asks what we think we should do. We'll have multiple options, but we'll go with learning something practical. Brelyna chimes in again, saying we agree with them, and asks why doesn't Tolfdir show them something. Tolfdir says we can start with wards, protective spells that block magic. He'll teach us all a ward, and we'll see if we can successfully use it to block spells. Then he asks us to help with the demonstration. He'll teach us a basic ward, as we don't know one yet. He'll request we stand on one of the symbols and hold the ward. We'll cast it and keep it up as Tolfdir launches a fireball at us. We'll block it successfully, and Tolfdir says he'd like us all to continue practicing with wards. Then he says we're ready to begin exploring some of the various applications of magic throughout history. The college has undertaken an excavation in the ruins of Saarthal nearby, that Tolfdir thinks is an excellent learning opportunity. He suggests we meet there in a few hours, and we'll head into the next quest. Before we jump into that quest, we'll talk to the other apprentices. Onmund says he was hoping he wouldn't be the only Nord, but he should have known better. We'll ask why there aren't many Nords at the college, and he explains that magic is shunned by most. If it can't be swung over your head and used to crack skulls, most Nords want nothing to do with it. He says Nords see magic as something for elves and weaker races, then says no offense, since we're an elf. Then he says to look at the evidence. Nords generally don't trust magic, so that's not off to a good start. Throw in the Oblivion Crisis, the main problem of the previous game, and the Aldmeri Dominion issues, and both of these are caused by magic users. Then take the fact that the college is the only thing left standing after most of Winterhold was destroyed, and it's all fairly damning. We'll ask Onmund if it's difficult being away from his family next. He says it's actually a blessing. His family thought coming here was a death sentence or worse, and it took years of insisting that this is what he's meant to do. Then we'll talk to Jazargo, who asks if we've mastered the expert destruction spells yet. We say not yet, but we will, and Jazargo says this is good, but he will know them first. He says it's good to be around mages who can keep up with him. Then we'll mention he seems excited to be here. He agrees and hopes to find things that will make him a more powerful mage here. Hopefully, small things that fit inside pockets and won't be noticed if they are missing. Just reaffirming that Khajiit stereotype of a thief, isn't he? We'll ask Jay-Z why he became a student of the college. He says the mages in Cyrodiil are all about politics, and the Synod and the College of Whispers are too busy guarding secrets to bother to teach. Skyrim wasn't his first choice, but the college here is removed from politics and dedicated to study, so it is a place for him to become great. We'll mention that he seems sure of himself, and he says there's much to be sure of. There is skill in magic, there is charm, and strong will. Jay-Z will be successful, of this there is no doubt. Then we'll say not everything is a competition, and he says we're wrong. He says the only reason we could disagree is because we are losing so badly we cannot see it, which you can flip around with the exact same logic, but we'll leave him be. Then we'll go on a brief trek out into the world, starting at Embershard Mine for mining purposes, and killing some bandits to get our skills up. We'll be upgrading our destruction spells to the Apprentice tier, as we'll be using Fireball instead of Flames this time around. As you scale spells up, their effects change, as can be seen when comparing Flames to Fireball. Flames are a cheap, continuous spew of fire doing low damage. Fireball is a more expensive, but farther reaching and more damaging attack that acts as a projectile. Most spells scale in this manner, where they become more expensive and harder to use, but with larger boosts to damage and range as a result. You'll unlock the perks that cut the magic cost in half for each spell tier, which is incredibly helpful, and I would recommend unlocking that as soon as possible. We'll also see our Conjuration skill going up each time we cast a weapon creation spell. These types of skills are very useful for skill farming, as you can use the cast, wait, repeat strategy to level up Conjuration this way. The only problem with this strategy, and this goes for multiple magic types, is that some spells in the categories do not give skill increases as you think they would. There are consistency issues with Conjuration specifically, where using the conjured thing will sometimes not give skill ups, which may be a balancing thing, but I think there's a solid argument to say what we conjure should add to the skill increases, no matter how it works after we create something. It's at least up for debate, but it's not like the devs will change anything. They'll just re-release the game again and expect modders to fix balancing issues. Anyway, I'd recommend using Conjuration and Bound Weapons for one simple reason: soul capture. The Conjuration tree has a perk that allows your bound weapons to capture souls and soul gems, which is something you will definitely want later on, as magic becomes more complicated, especially when using some of the weapons we'll find that mages can make great use of. Enchanting will also be a major help, as you'll want to enchant your gear with as many magic buffs as possible to maximize spell damage, regeneration, and your resource pool. Adding to the list of things to do before Saarthal, we'll work on gear and enchanting upgrades so we can improve our magic capabilities on our boots and bracers. We don't have much at the moment, but once we get these skills up, we'll have several great options available for enchanting upgrades perfect for a mage. But let's head to the excavation quest. We'll head to Saarthal, just southwest of Winterhold, and meet up with our group. We'll talk to Brelyna, who confirms several things before we can ask, such as she has an ancestry steeped in magic, no, she doesn't want to talk about it, she knew Winterhold used to be full of her kind, and now she doesn't care that they're all gone. Then she asks if that covers everything, which we'll respond by saying we haven't been introduced. She agrees, and then introduces herself as Brelyna Marion of House Telvanni, and the first of her family to leave Morrowind in a long time. She's here to study conjuration, as that is what's important. We'll ask if she's nervous about being at Saarthal, to which she'll ask if it's because it's old and full of dead things, then mentions we clearly never spent time in Morrowind. That definitely paints a disturbing image of Morrowind. We'll also ask if she knows anything about Saarthal, to which she explains that she doesn't know much except that it's very old and was one of the first cities of men in Tamriel. We'll talk to her later, but now it's time for Tolfdir. We'll ask what's so important about this place, and he'll explain the magical seals placed on the tombs here are unlike anything they've encountered before. We can ask what we're looking for, and Tolfdir says anything of interest. That's why he adores this location. We have no idea what we're going to find. Then he cheekily adds that his message about the dangers of magic could sink in for a few students here as a happy coincidence. Now we'll move inside. Tolfdir will ask us to stay close, saying it should be safe, but it's always better to be cautious. As we walk around, Tolfdir will explain that Saarthal was one of the earliest Nord settlements in Skyrim, as well as the largest. It was sacked by the elves in an infamous Night of Tears, but not much else is known about what happened to Saarthal. He mentions this as an exciting opportunity to study such an early civilization, and the magics they used. Then we'll talk to Tolfdir for our next move. He says to assist Arniel Gain, one of the college scholars, as he's here cataloging our findings. Tolfdir expects that Gain would appreciate help in locating magical artifacts in the ruins. He'll mention any enchanted item will do, as the usefulness of the enchantment is irrelevant as we can look over anything. Before we head out, he'll give some instructions to Brelyna to find warding magics that keep people out. He cautions her to only identify them, not interact with them. Then we'll look for Arniel. We'll find him further along the path where he'll tell us not to touch anything, and not to make a mess of his work. He's already looked through a portion of the section we're in, but he says we can look around in the chambers just north of here. We'll find enchanted rings on the ground that increase health until we find an ancient amulet that, once removed from its pedestal, locks us in the room. Tolfdir will find us and ask how we got ourselves trapped. We'll relay the story of the amulet, and Tolfdir asks if there's a way we can use it as it may be important. We'll put the Saarthal amulet on, which gives a 3% reduction to spell costs. Everything helps, but it's like saving 3 cents on a dollar soda at a vending machine. Helpful, but not by much. Anyway, putting on the amulet creates a resonance on the wall we got it from. We'll throw a fireball at it, and the wall breaks to reveal a passage, and the bars preventing our escape retract to allow Tolfdir to join us. We'll walk with him through a tunnel until we reach a room with a few coffins. Once we arrive, we'll enter a vision-like state where we'll be visited by Nerian. He says we have set in motion a chain of events that cannot be stopped, and judgment has not been passed as we had no way of knowing about something. Judgment will be based on our actions to come, and how we deal with the dangers ahead. This warning is passed to us because the Psijic Order believes in us, as we have the potential to prevent disaster. He tells us to take care, and the Order is watching us as we leave the vision state. Tolfdir is affected, then asks what happened, and will relay the warning. Tolfdir says it doesn't make sense as the Psijics have no connection to these ruins and haven't been seen in a long time. Then he'll say we should look inside the coffins before we ask some questions. We'll ask of the Psijic Order and learn they were a group of mages with a history that predates the Empire, who were powerful and secretive. No one's seen them in over 100 years, as they vanished along with their sanctuary on the Isle of Artaeum. Tolfdir has no clue how they'd be connected to these ruins, though. We'll ask why they would contact us, and Tolfdir says it's fascinating, but has no idea why, assuming it's true, then reiterates their disappearance. If nothing else, Tolfdir says it should be taken as a compliment, as they have only ever dealt with those they feel worthy. Then we'll buy an apprentice robe for a boost in our magicka regen, and we'll move on. Moving on involves being attacked by Draugr in the coffins. One of the coffins is a fake door leading deeper into the crypt. We'll explore with Tolfdir as we come across a room with several coffins in front of a barred door. We'll kill more Draugr, and Tolfdir says he's never seen anything like this in Nordic ruins before. He says he'd like to stay and study the room, but we should press on to find whatever our vision mentioned. Thank Akatosh that Skyrim knows when to relieve you of escort quests. At least sometimes. We'll enter the next area and fight our way through some smelly Nord corpses while dealing with runes. Runes are magical traps placed on the ground that deal heavy damage in an area of effect once triggered by walking over them. These come in each magic type, so we'll keep an eye out for strange glowing glyphs on the ground. We'll also be ransacking the place since our average equip load is so low. We'll find a Nord puzzle where we have to match the symbols on the pillars to the pictures behind each of them. I have no idea how you could get this wrong, but we all know a moron or two that could find a way. We'll continue until we reach another puzzle requiring us to match pillars again, but this time, turning certain pillars moves specific other pillars. Now it's an arithmetic game of moving one to move the others in a pattern that will result in the correct combo. Once through the puzzle, Tolfdir will catch up to us and we'll reach the final area. Inside, we'll find a sphere surrounded by a magical barrier. Tolfdir questions what it is and why it's buried within Saarthal before we head down and begin combat with Jurek Galderson. He takes no damage, so Tolfdir tells us to keep Jurek busy while he tries to drain the power from the sphere. When ready, we'll attack and cut the Draugr down. We'll loot a Galder amulet fragment off his body, which boosts magicka by 30, and find a writ of sealing. This will start the Galder legend quest, which we'll deal with later in this series of videos. We'll also loot the Staff of Jurek Galderson, which deals 25 points of damage and twice as much magicka damage, useful for counteracting other magic users. Anyway, Tolfdir says the sphere is unique, and when we ask what it is, he has no idea again, but says it's amazing and the Archmage needs to see it for himself. Tolfdir won't leave this unattended, so he asks us to return to the college and inform the Archmage, Savos Aran, of our discovery. Before we leave, we'll grab the word of power Ice for Ice form and take a shortcut back to the entrance of Saarthal. We'll return to the college and meet Savos in his quarters, where he acknowledges us as new and that we haven't spoken. We say no sir, with Savos saying how quaint our civility is. Then he explains he's the Archmage and that he's content to see nearly any aspect of magic explored here, but he does not approve of any research or experiments that cause purposeful harm to fellow members. We have a plethora of dialogue options, but we'll mention the Saarthal orb first. Savos begins by pleading that we don't have another incinerated apprentice on our hands, as he has enough to deal with right now. He'll agree to look at the orb, and then prepares us to research the subject ourselves, as both he and Tolfdir will be occupied with the orb. We're led to Urag in the Arcanium, the orc librarian we met in the main questline, as he should be aware of anything that matches our discovery. Then Savos will gift us a Staff of Magelight to help our ruin exploration in the future, which is underwhelming to say the least. Then the quest ends. Before we move on, we'll talk to Savos, beginning by mentioning dangerous research must be a problem here. Savos admits risks must be taken, but he's simply trying to avoid untimely deaths and worsening what Skyrim thinks of us. We can ask if he ever met with the Psijic Order, and he'll say he didn't personally, but one of their members advised the Archmage when he was an apprentice here. But that was many years ago, before their members were recalled and they disappeared. This makes Savos over 100 years old, probably closer to 130 or so, which we'll bring up later. We can ask what the purpose of the college is, with Savos saying it should be self-evident. Magic is a true power, not something to be shunned by commoners or treated as an amusing diversion by politicians. It shapes worlds, creates and destroys life, and it deserves proper respect and study. The college is here to allow us to focus on that, without the pressures of the world weighing down on us. Now we'll ask about the college's history. Savos says he's seen documents dating back to the late Second Era, but beyond that, it's hard to say. Events in the last several hundred years resulted in a significant loss of our history. A following dialogue option lets us ask what happened, and Savos says the Great Collapse happened. It was an unfortunate natural disaster that ravaged the area. The college fared far better than the city of Winterhold, but it was not left untouched. Then he'll explain no one is sure of the cause of the Great Collapse. Some believe the eruption of Red Mountain had far-reaching consequences that were felt years later. Some blame the college. He assures us this was not the case. We can ask for more details, and he says the Sea of Ghosts practically came alive and battered the shore for weeks on end. Winterhold was ancient and weathered, but couldn't withstand the sea's fury, and entire districts were lost overnight. The waves receded in time, but the damage was irreversible. Most residents abandoned what was left of the city. The college survived and remained. After that inspiring story, let's move over to another of the teachers here. We'll talk to Colette Marantz, who very insecurely asks if we consider Restoration a valid school of magic that is worthy of study. We'll say of course it's valid, and Colette says she doesn't require validation, but some unnamed individuals would disagree. She says it can make life difficult when colleagues fail to recognize the research one engages in, which is annoying. We can ask if she's treated badly because of her work, and she says no, at least not directly, but she knows things are being said behind her back, as conversations cease when she enters a room. Colette can be helpful if you need restoration training or spells, but her voice and paranoid attitude can become a bit grating over time. But let's get into the next quest. We'll head to Urag in the Arcanium, where he'll threaten us with Atronachs if we disrupt it. We'll mention we need to learn something in Saarthal, but Urag knows of the big mystery we're investigating. Sadly, he doesn't have anything anymore, but mentions someone named Orthorn stealing a number of books when he ran off to Felglow Keep to join a group of summoners, supposedly using the books as a peace offering. One of those volumes contains what we need, so we'll have to find Orthorn. We can ask why these mages are in Felglow Keep, and Urag explains they were persuaded to leave the college, as they were interested in research that goes over the bounds of what is allowed. We can ask about Orthorn, who Urag describes as an apprentice at the college that wasn't very skilled, but got involved with a group of mages who liked him. When they left, Orthorn took after them, stealing supplies and books in the process to ingratiate himself with them. We can question if anyone cares about the Orthorn situation, but Urag says nobody is worried enough to bother with it. Then he mentions the Archmage's approach to these things is to let them sort themselves out, which is remarkably lazy, but I guess we could see ourselves as part of letting it work itself out. But I digress. With this, we'll head out, but Onkano stops us before we can leave and questions us about what we found in Saarthal. He expects a full report from Tolfdir when he returns, and when we ask why this matters to Onkano, he says something significant enough to send a new member of the college back alone to deliver the word sounds like something that should matter to everyone. I could definitely see it as suspicious if we stretch it, but Onkano is clearly built to be the nosy Thalmor who butts in at inappropriate times. He'll let us go, and we'll move on. Before we begin our search for the books by heading to Whiterun, as Felglow Keep is just northeast of it, we'll get spammed by interactable NPC stuff before farming more smithing and enchanting skills. We don't have the skills yet, but it is possible to reduce spell cost by 100% depending on the type. This mostly applies to destruction, but some of the late game enchantments for magic users can become quite overpowered, especially since magic is pretty overpowered to begin with when you add potion bonuses to enchanting items. We'll head back to the college for a moment and meet Neria, who says it's all lies and she doesn't care what some woman told us. When we question what she's talking about, Neria will say it's Feralda, the mage we met when entering the college, and Neria says she knows she's been up to something. We'll ask what her problem is with Feralda, and she says Feralda's the one with the problem with Neria. Then we see what this is about, as Neria says Feralda is threatened by her skills as a wizard, her elegance, her posture, and superior good looks. But Neria won't let Feralda get the better of her, saying that's what she's after. The paranoid narcissism is rampant here. When we're done with personal baggage, we can ask her about Onkano. She says not to trust him, as he's up to something, as a suspicious kitty walks by. Unintentional hilarity is common during dialogue in this game. Anyway, Neria says most are up to something here, but she thinks he isn't up to anything good, then mentions how handsome she finds him. Then we'll talk to Drevis Neloran, the illusion master of the college, who awkwardly asks if we can see him. We inform him we can, and he is annoyed that he was surely invisible, or at least transparent. Just wanted to say hi to him and check out his wares before moving on. We'll do the same with several other teachers here, where you can find various gear that boost your respective magic type uses and regeneration. Now we're finally ready to go for the books. We'll walk over to Felglow Keep and fight through some mages and their Atronachs. Atronachs are elemental enemies that feature something relevant to their type. Flame Atronachs chuck fireballs at you and explode after death. Frost Atronachs can take a beating, and Storm Atronachs can electrocute you. Obviously, they are each resistant to their own magic types, so keep each type on hand in the event of multiple Atronachs coming your way. Anyway, we'll head inside the keep and begin looting and zapping mages, along with their minions. We'll find several cells housing vampires, as well as pet spiders. These mages were definitely doing something dangerous to keep giant arachnids and vampires around. We can free the vampires and they'll run out without attacking you, which is a neat detail that not all vampires are immediately hostile, even the unnamed ones. We'll continue into a room with several locked cells with switches, and we'll find Orthorn in one of them. We'll talk to him, where he'll assume the Archmage sent us to rescue him. We'll tell him we're only here for the books, and he admits he shouldn't have taken them, and that it won't happen again. He'll offer to help us find the books, and we're given the optional objective to free him from the cell. We'll ask him why he's in this cage, and he says he was going to be one of the mage's experiments. He thought he would join them instead of becoming their guinea pig. We'll ask where the books are, and he says he doesn't have them, as the caller took them. We'll free Orthorn, and he says he'll help, and then head back to the college and beg them to let him back in. When we ask again for the books, he'll offer to help, and we'll tell him to get out as he just get in the way. Then we start blasting. We'll fight our way through the keep until we reach the ritual chamber where the books and the caller are. She greets us by saying we're the one who barged into her home and laid waste to her projects. She says it's nice to meet us, and when we ask who she is, she says names don't matter and asks why we're here. We'll explain we're here for the books before she calls us one of Arin's lackeys. She mentions how disappointing that is, as we show real promise. Then she says we come here, kill her assistants, disrupt her work, and annoy her, so she doesn't think we'll be getting anything. We can offer to make an arrangement, but she'll say we have nothing to offer, and we either leave or she kills us. We'll try asking politely before the caller says we're beyond pleasantries. She'll offer us a chance to turn around and leave, and then we say we're not going anywhere without the books. Then we'll fight. She'll summon some flame atronachs, and we'll teleport around the area to avoid us. Eventually, we show her the power of magic, as she resorts to punching us. We'll fry her brain before picking up the books we need. Then we'll return to the college. Urag is thankful for bringing the books back, then he'll mention one of the books, Night of Tears, as it has interesting implications that we should mention to Tolfdir. Then he'll begrudgingly give us some books to help with various skills as we move into the next quest. We'll find Tolfdir and the orb in the main hall, and when we talk to him, we'll explain the book Urag mentioned to us. Tolfdir says he'll make time to reread it, but he can't seem to tear himself away from the orb. Whatever it is, it's like nothing he's ever seen. Then we'll get a Tolfdir info dump on his obsessions of the orb. The markings are unlike anything we've seen before, that match nothing known to us. Then he mentions that he can feel the orb radiating magicka, and he mentions the Archmage is hard at work and hopefully we'll have more information soon. We'll be interrupted by Ankano, much to the annoyance of Tolfdir, and Ankano will explain someone claiming to be from the Psijic Order is here and asking for us specifically. We'll ask why he's so concerned, and he says he'll be the one asking questions. All we need to know is the Psijic Order is a rogue organization, believing themselves to be above the law, more specifically, Thalmor law. Then he mentions them clashing with the Aldmeri Dominion before, and he has no intention of allowing that to happen here. Ankano says we'll speak to this monk, and afterwards he will be removed from the college grounds. Then we'll follow Ankano upstairs to the Archmage's quarters. When we arrive, we'll enter the vision mode again, where time freezes for everyone but us and Quaranir, indicating this is definitely involving the Psijic Order. He says he simply wishes to talk to us, but he must be brief as he can't freeze time for long. He says the situation here is of dire importance, and attempts to contact us have previously failed. He believes it's due to the orb, or the Eye of Magnus as our people have taken to calling it. Its energy is causing interference that prevents the Psijic Order from reaching out to us in visions. Then Quaranir says the longer the Eye remains here, the more dangerous the situation becomes, and so he's personally come to tell us it must be dealt with. That's pretty obvious, Mr. Quarry. When we ask why the Order won't do something about this, he explains the Psijic Order does not typically intervene directly in events. His presence here will be seen as an affront to some within the Order, and as soon as we've finished, he will be leaving the college. He's all too aware of his arrival arousing suspicion, especially in Ankano, and he mentions again that the Order will leave it to us to solve the problem. When we ask what exactly the problem is, he says the Eye of Magnus is immensely powerful, and the world is not ready for it, as it would certainly be misused. Many in the Order believe it has already been misused, or rather something will happen soon that cannot be avoided. We'll ask what we're expected to do, and he says they believe our efforts should be directed towards dealing with the aftermath, but can't predict what that will be. He fears he has already overstepped the bounds of his order, but will point us to seek out the Augur of Dun Lane here in the college. His perception may be more coherent than others. We can ask who and where the Augur is, and Quaranir says he was once a student who became something different, and that he is unsure of his location, but knows he's in the college somewhere. Then he points us to ask one of our colleagues, as one of them must know. Then he apologizes, as he must leave, and says the Order will continue to observe and guide us as best we can. We'll return to the present time, or whatever we should consider it, and Ankano will ask what the meaning of this is, and Quaranir plays dumb, with Ankano expressing his suspicion, before Arin hopes we haven't offended a member of the Order. Then we'll ask him about the Augur, and he mentions Tolfdir telling stories again. making me wonder how many people actually know and believe the augur exists. But Arniel says this is a subject inappropriate for conversation. We don't get much out of him, so we'll talk to Tolfdir. We'll track him back to the Hall of Attainment, and we'll learn the augur resides in the Midden, but Tolfdir hasn't checked or spoken to him in years. He'll ask us to say hello for him, and when we ask where the Midden is, he says it's underneath the college and isn't the nicest place, so he warns us to be careful. Before we go, we'll probe Tolfdir's mind for augur details. He says it was all before his time, as he heard the stories same as everyone else. The augur was a brilliant student, an accomplished wizard, and delved into magic in a way none had seen before, but he focused too much on how much power he could acquire, and that led to an accident. We get no more details after that, so we'll head into the Midden via a small trapdoor along the college perimeter. The Midden is an area with a few different paths leading around the underbelly of the college. We'll face a Draugr and then enter the Midden Dark, where we'll fight through other pests until we reach an area with several occult rituals around a Daedric gauntlet. A journal nearby explains some missing students tried to summon something beyond their capabilities and were killed during the process. It'll also mention 4 rings taken from the gauntlet that are now housed in the Arcanium. We'll deal with that another time. The next area houses 2 skeletons, and then we'll take a turn to reach the augur. An ethereal voice speaks to us when we get close to a door, saying our perseverance will only lead to disappointment. Then he allows us to enter. The augur is a blinding light of energy, and once we speak to him, he says our efforts are in vain as something has already begun. He mentions that those who sent us did not tell us what they seek or what we seek. When we ask what that is, the augur says it's what all who wield magic seek: knowledge. Then he says we will find that knowledge corrupts, destroys, and consumes. He says we seek shelter in knowledge, but we will not find it. The augur says the Thalmor sought the same thing, and it shall lead to his end as it has so many others. We'll learn this Thalmor is obviously on Kano, and we learn he seeks information about the Eye, but the augur says what he will find shall be different. Kano's path will cross ours in time, but first we must find that which we need. Then the augur explains that we need to know more about the Eye of Magnus if we wish to avoid the disaster we are not yet aware of. Then we learn that to see through Magnus's eye without being blinded, we require his staff. Then he says events spiral quickly towards the inevitable center, so we must act with haste, and we're told to take this knowledge to the Archmage. We'll work our way out and find the Atronach Forge. We'll learn from the nearby journal that explains the secrecy and use of the forge. This forge has an offering box and a lever, along with an unknown spherical object, which requires ingredients to be placed into the offering box and the lever pulled to conjure anything. The only problem is we need an item we don't see for a bit, so we'll move on. We'll return to the main hall and find Savos to let him know of the Staff of Magnus. He says he'd love to have such a powerful item, but he's not sure they really need it. We'll inform him that the augur specifically mentioned this, and he says he's impressed by our initiative. Then he mentions someone will have to follow up on this, meaning us, and we're pointed to Mirabelle, as she mentioned the staff recently and might know more. Then he compliments our progress, as we've proven ourselves to be more than a mere apprentice. Then we'll be given the Mage's Circlet, which boosts Magicka reserves by 50 and is quite helpful as we transition into the next quest. Now we'll head to Mirabelle for details on the Staff of Magnus. When we talk to her, she deems it odd to ask about the staff, and says she appreciates the finding of the orb, but we shouldn't assign importance to something unless we're sure it's worthy of it. Then we'll mention the augur referred to the orb as the Eye of Magnus, and Mirabelle will caution us to be careful with whatever is going on. Then she'll give some details of the staff, saying it's said to be very powerful and has the capacity to store an incredible amount of magic power as the story goes, but now it's more myth than anything. She doesn't doubt it exists, but no one has seen it in decades or longer. Then she mentions her only hearing it mentioned when some Synod characters showed up months ago looking for it. We'll learn the Synod are mages based in Cyrodiil, and fancy themselves the imperial authority on magic during the last few hundred years. Mirabelle understands all they really do is make noise to curry favor from the Emperor. Lots of politics and little magic as to be expected. She was surprised by their arrival, and while friendly, their questioning made her uneasy. It became clear to Mirabelle they were trying to hoard powerful artifacts to consolidate power. We'll question if nobody knows the staff's location, and Mirabelle says the Synod seemed convinced it was somewhere in Skyrim and inquired about the ruins of Mazulft, but that's all she remembers. She mentions them going there and to not expect their cooperation if we find them. We can ask for more details of the staff, and she says it was believed to be made by Magnus himself, and was the only thing that could adequately contain his power. Then she says it's the sort of embellishment wizards of ancient times loved to make, so it's up to interpretation at this point. Now that we have a target, we have an objective to reach. But first, more grinding skills, which leads to us purchasing the Adept Robes of Destruction for even beefier spells and regen. We'll also find Tolfdir's Alembic, which is a part of a repeatable quest with him where he misplaces it and asks you to find it, offering a little gold and a weaker soul gem as a reward. It'll spawn around the college, so it's not too difficult to complete for the extra rewards. Tolfdir mentions it has sentimental value, and is embarrassing to ask for help with finding the Alembic, but we all get old and forgetful one day, so we'll help him out. Then we'll find Mazulft nestle along the eastern border of Eastmarch, and we'll head over. As always, the Dwemer ruins will be filled with traps and goodies, along with the usual threats of Dwemtech, Falmer, or a mixture of both. This time, however, we'll find a wounded Synod mage named Gavros Plinus, who says a crystal is gone, and to find Paratus in the Oculary before he dies. His journal explains the Synod Council sent them to use a crystal in the Oculary for a purpose we'll see soon. With that, we'll explore the ruins and find many dead Synod mages amongst the typical threats. One thing to keep in mind during this quest is that there will be a lot of Dwemer parts here you can use for a later quest, or for smithing purposes if you want to make the most of this dead civilization. We'll go over the quest I mentioned later once the questline is complete. Anyway, we'll kill 1 billion Falmer before looting a focusing crystal off of one of them. We'll need this as we walk up to a door and hear Paratus on the other side. He assumes we're Gavros and opens the door before drawing spells against us. He demands to know what we've done with Gavros, and we explain the situation with the Falmer killing them all, and that we found the crystal Paratus needs. We'll learn that the crystal was warped by the cold on their way over here, so Gavros ran off to get it fixed while the rest of the Synod held off the Falmer, or failed to. Then Paratus says Gavros took the credit for using the crystal for official Synod business. Per usual, he can't tell us anything, but we'll inform him we're looking for the Staff of Magnus. He says he can't help with that, and then we'll hand over the crystal he needs. He excitedly says we can continue the project before asking who we're with. We'll tell him the college, and he holds a grudge as Savos wouldn't grant them an audience, but now we expect something from him? He doesn't like it, but he'll help us as we helped him. We'll follow him as he continues complaining about Gavros stealing his idea, and making sure to remind the council of this when he gets back. He'll also explain the machine we come to is designed to collect starlight and then use it for an unknown purpose. He goes on, saying this idea to replace one of the key elements with the focusing crystal took months of enchantments to create. We'll run to the upper level of the machine, and Paratus will tell us to place the crystal so we can begin focusing it. We'll do so and ask what to do. Heating and cooling the crystal causes it to expand or contract, which will change how the light passes through it. He says we should know the spells to do this, then throws some dirt at the college if we don't know the spells due to the substandard he's heard of. The problem with this puzzle is that heating and cooling the crystal requires the base flames or frostbite to change the crystal, so no spell higher will have an effect on it. This is logically dumb as a brick with one chromosome, but we'll move the lights and then shift the mirrors around until the puzzle is complete. Paratus says these results should not at all be what they are. The projection of the world should be lit up like the night sky, but something is creating an incredible amount of interference, specifically coming from Winterhold. Paratus goes on a deranged rant saying this is all to stall his work and take this discovery from him before we convince him we're not ruining his life. He'll come around and mention that they have a similar system like this in the Imperial City, the Orrery, which projects a map of sources of great magical power, and because of what we've seen with the Eye of Magnus, only the college and one other location are lit up right now. This other area, Labyrinthian, will be seen soon, but Paratus goes on another rant about foiling our lies before mentioning what we have at Winterhold is something the Synod Council will be interested in. Then he pridefully tells us to trudge off to Labyrinthian to find the staff while he returns to Cyrodiil to deliver his report. We'll mention he's gone crazy from being in here for too long, and he'll retort that he's discovered more than he hoped to and our trickery won't confuse him. Then we'll get ready to leave before we enter another vision. Nerian will appear and say we've done well, but trying times are ahead. It's imperative we return to the college, as we will be called on to take swift action and rise to the challenge to discover what we are capable of. Then he says we're on the right path, and will prevail before we return to the college. We'll head inside the main hall to find a barrier preventing Savos and Mirabelle from entering the area with the orb. They discuss it's like a ward being cast by Oncano inside, and we'll talk to the Archmage for details. Oncano is in there doing something we aren't sure of, and will help the two of them break through to the inner chamber. We'll find Oncano electrifying the orb, and when Savos tries to stop him, we'll be blinded by a light and reappear with Mirabelle on the floor, and the barrier around Oncano has returned, as the quest transitions to the next one. The next quest begins with Mirabelle tasking us to find the Archmage, as he was blown clear and may be injured. She'll need a minute to catch her breath as we head outside to find Arn dead. We'll talk to Tolfdir about what happened, and he'll point us toward Winterhold, as whatever Ancano did has done something else in town, and we need to make sure it's safe. We'll try interacting with the Archmage's corpse, but we can't loot him, which is odd, as we will get his gear later anyway, so why block him off now? He's dead, and we could use the loot. Anyway, we'll head into town with Feralda and Arniel and find a group of magic anomalies roaming around. We have to kill 10 of them, which can be incredibly annoying depending on your preferred spells, as they are small targets and constantly moving around, making it difficult to hit them with regular magic attacks. We'll cut them down and head back inside to talk to Mirabelle. We'll inform her that Winterhold is safe for now. She says she and Tolfdir can try to contain this as best as they can, but we need the Staff of Magnus now. She acts surprised when we mention Labyrinthian, and explains the Archmage gave her something that deals with Labyrinthian, and that she'd know when the time came to use it. She says it was meant for us, and that it was something very personal to Savos, but she doesn't know why. We'll also get Savos Aran's amulet, boosting Magicka by 50, and we're told to get the staff before Ancano brings the whole college down around us as we move into the next quest. We'll be cheating in the Archmage's robes, as we have every reason to have that available right now, and trust me, we'll need it for a reason I'll bring up later. It's one of the best magical items in the game, reducing all spell costs by 15%, increasing Magicka by 50, and Magicka regeneration by 100%. And it was on a body we couldn't loot because the game said so. Thanks, game. Real consistent. But let's move on. We'll need to reach Labyrinthian, which is located southeast of Morthal. We'll wade through the snow until we find the large crypt that is the lab. We'll cut down some frost trolls before finding a major door that uses the item Mirabelle got from Savos. When ready to use it, we'll find a group of 6 spirits or memories, I'm not exactly sure what to call them, including Savos. Let's listen to their story.
Come on, we're finally here. Let's not waste any more time.
Are we truly sure this is a good idea?
We'll be back at the college before anyone even knows we're gone.
You would care about that, since you're the Archmage's favorite.
Don't forget, this whole idea was Atma's to begin with.
Let's just get inside, see what's in there.
Once inside, we'll hear them talking again, along with their naivety and overconfidence.
I can't believe we're doing this.
Can you imagine the looks on their faces when we come back?
You keep talking like you're sure we'll fucking do something useful here.
Given the history of this place, it's more than likely there's still some amount of power here.
Enchanted weapons, tomes of ancient knowledge, Shalador's secrets themselves. Who knows what we could find?
And what if there are things guarding this place?
Against 6 college-trained mages? I think we'll be fine.
We'll fight through an area with lots of skeletons and a bone dragon. As we've trained well, we'll cut them down with ease before encountering the ghosts near the end of the chamber.
We have to go back. We can't leave Gerduin.
We barely made it out alive.
What was that thing?
You want to go back in?
It's too late. There isn't enough of him left to go back in after.
Gods, what have we done?
We can't go back. Might as well go forward. We can still do this.
Savos is right. We can make it if we just stay alert.
Personally, I'd start running for the hills after losing a colleague like that. The nearby pedestal reads, "Hail all, brave city Bromjanar, forever these walls shall stand. May enemies see her majesty, may all quake to behold her." Now we'll move into the next area and we'll encounter a doorway who drains all of our magicka, for some reason. This is the reason I cheated the Archmage's robes in, as these encounters are frequent and annoying. Anyway, we'll hear a voice say something in the dragon language akin to, "Who comes to my dark domain?" and engage in combat with a Draugr and a spirit before burning our way through a frozen door. This tells you these doors will be open through magic usage, with this one including a flames book nearby in the event you have no fire spells, which is weird since every race starts with flames. Rather odd in my opinion, but you could consider it a subtle way to explain how to get through the door. Anyway, we'll encounter more magic-draining words saying, "Cowardly men shall find no mercy here." This will all make sense as we continue into the depths. Reminding you of the draining voice, these encounters hamper combat where your battery for spell usage in general is depleted. It's just an arbitrary extension of playtime by telling the player, "Take a second to regen, you fool." Why do we even need this to begin with? Moving on, we'll fight through more undead before the voice speaks in our language, asking why he must use our guttural language. We'll eventually reach a passage at the bottom of the cavern where the voice will ask if we are Arin, his old friend. Then we'll move into the next area and fight through more dead things until we hear the voice ask if we seek to finish that which we could not, while draining our magicka mid-fight. I seriously can't overstate how annoying that is. We'll continue and the voice will say we only face failure once more. We'll cut through more enemies and then the voice will say we aren't Arin and ask if he sent us in his place. We'll slowly regen magicka and continue before the voice asks if Arin warned us that our own power would be our undoing, as it would only serve to strengthen the voice. Then we'll freeze through a flaming door and find another moment from Arin's past.
Just another minute, please.
Come on! We can't stop now. We have to keep moving.
Where's Elvery? She was right behind me.
Dead. Something grabbed her from behind. Gone before I could do anything.
This is insanity. We never should have come.
You're right. This is all my fault. Should we turn around, head back?
I don't think going back is a good idea.
Going back would be the end of all of us. We keep pushing forward and we'll make it. We will!
Come on, you can make it. Let's go.
You can probably see where this is going by now. We'll keep going, and the voice tells us to come and face our end. Can't wait to make this mana sucker pay for his annoying part in this quest. The ghosts here drop weapons that absorb magicka, stamina, or health, so this is a great place to grab a weapon for the enchanting purposes, or give you a cool spectral weapon. We'll eventually reach an area with trap soul gems, along with one that seems to shoot nuclear fireballs at us, as it drops health incredibly quickly, and the frost gem nearby just slows us down. This area can be rewarding, but also incredibly annoying. Slugging on, we'll have our magicka drained at random without the voice saying anything. It's like a middle finger to the player just because. We'll fight an uber ghost deathlord before learning the time part of the slow time shout, and we'll deal with more bad things until we reach another memory.
What else could we do? Can I die with her? She refused to go on. We didn't have a choice.
This is it, you know. Through this door. Can you feel it?
We're not going to make it, are we?
We stay together, no matter what. Agreed?
I'll be right with you.
Agreed. We all stay together.
The doom is setting in. We'll enter the final room to find enthralled ghosts holding a barrier around a dragon priest. Once we kill them both, we'll fight the dragon fanboy, Maroki. He can become a bit special when fighting him, as he'll just float there while we spam him with spells. We'll eventually whittle him down and find the Staff of Magnus on him, along with his mask. The staff absorbs 20 magicka per second and moves to health when magicka is gone. This is pretty cool as an effect, but we'll need to keep the staff charged with soul gems. Staves don't require magicka to use them, but they deplete power and recharge with soul gems. They're a magical workaround, which can be helpful, but also costly, as using them can lead to extra soul gem expenses. Maroki's mask increases magicka regeneration by 100%. I've not looked into it to see how all the regen is calculated, whether it's a flat stack or compounds with each piece, but either way, it's a pretty sweet addition to our arsenal, plus it looks cool. With this out of the way, we'll begin our trek back to the college. The back door of this place leads us to Arin's final memory.
I'm sorry, friends. I'm so sorry. I had no choice. It was the only way to make sure that monster never escaped. I promise you, I'll never let this happen again. I'll seal this whole place away.
We can infer from this that the two ghosts holding Maroki back were the two remaining members of Arin's party that came to Labyrinthian, leading to him being the only survivor of this expedition. We'll then meet Estormo, a Thalmor mage, who says Ancano was right as we are dangerous. Then he says he'll take the staff as Ancano wants it kept safe, and he wants us dead. We don't have to kill Estormo, but we will since he's one of Ancano's henchmen. Then we'll leave Labyrinthian. For now. We'll return to find the ward expanding around the college and preventing anyone from entering. Tolfdir will inform us that Mirabelle didn't make it, as she stayed behind and made sure everyone got out alright. Then we'll learn Ancano's power is growing, and they can't crack whatever magic he's using for the shield. Then we'll move into the final main quest. We'll use the Staff of Magnus to break the shield and find members of the college just chilling inside. Really destroys immersion when we just talked about a member dying to make sure everyone got out safely, just to learn she died and some idiots are wandering around as if nothing happened. Anyway, we'll confront Ancano inside, who mocks us for thinking we can stop him. Spells can't touch him, but Tolfdir says to use the staff on the eye. We will, and it will begin to shift its form around before Ancano attacks us. We'll reform the orb back to the way it was before, and we'll kill Ancano in the most awkward way possible. What a way to end his reign of terror. We'll talk to Tolfdir afterward, and he has no idea what to do. Then Quaranir appears, not in a vision this time, who says our victory here justifies their belief in us. We've proven ourselves more than worthy to guide the college. We'll ask how they knew we'd defeat Ancano, and he says many things obscured to us are clear to them, and they have long believed we would prevail. When we ask what to do now, Quaranir says the eye has grown unstable and cannot remain here, or else it may destroy the college and the world. It must be secured, with Ancano's actions proving that the world is not ready for such a thing. The Psijic Order will safeguard it for now, and he says we can carry on with our lives and calls us Archmage. No idea why you can give us that role, but hey, that's a perk. Then his friends appear, and they teleport away with the orb. For all we know, they may be just as bad as Ancano, maybe worse. But with that, we've completed the College of Winterhold questline. Tolfdir expresses his approval of our new role as Archmage, and he gives us access to the Archmage's quarters and the actual Archmage robes this time. Would have been helpful to have before drowning in magicka drainage, but here we are. Tolfdir also mentions he will be here for advice, and he essentially serves as your second in command of the college and de facto leader should you make them mad, which can totally happen. But with that, we're going to move into some post-questline content. We'll start the extra content by bringing 3 petty soul gems to Sergius Turianus. We'll give him a few to restock his supplies, and we'll get paid in gold for them. It's short and sweet, but we lose 3 soul gems for measly amounts of gold. Better off to use them for something else. But now let's talk to Finis Gestor about summoning undead. Not for us to do it, but to learn the college's stance on it. It is my duty, or rather bare-bones responsibility, to know what rules I'm supposed to enforce. Finis says summoning undead is not frowned upon here, as those policies died out with the Mages Guild, and were never enforced here. We'll ask if there are many conjurers outside the college, and Finis says there aren't any within society, as many practice secretly. Phalion was his teacher, and one of the few who are public about what he does, but he left the college years ago. When we ask why Phalion left, Finis says he didn't like the Archmage. He hated dealing with him and answering to him. Phalion hated what this place was becoming, so he left a note on Arin's desk, and that was it. Finis understands he settled down in Hjalmarch, and his presence there caused something of a problem. We'll see more on that later. Next we'll talk to Arniel Gain, and ask if there is any college business we can assist with. He says no official business, but he notices how we've risen through the ranks quickly and mentions a project he's working on. We ask if it's dangerous, which he says he doesn't think it is, and he asks for Dwemer cogs. He needs to understand how they were made, so we'll bring him 10 cogs we found while foraging earlier in the run. He'll pay us and mention that it's too early to get excited, and he'll reach out to us when he needs anything else. That anything else is right now. He retained Enther's services, the black market trader amongst the college residents, and we need to speak with him to facilitate an arrangement. As an aside, this quest will appear and reappear in your quest log with the same title, but different information within it, so tracking this quest can become a bit confusing. Anyway, we'll find Enther with the apprentices. He'll flatter us, saying all of Tamriel owes us a great debt. Then we'll get down to business. When we mention he has something of Arniel's, he mocks the man by saying he sends us because he's afraid to talk himself. Then he says he has something that is his own, as he was going to sell it to Arniel. Arniel was unwilling to pay the price for it. We ask what payment was, and learn it's a staff for a friend of Enther's. We'll need to recover the staff from a less than friendly individual and return it to Enther if Arniel is to get what he needs. We'll find a necromancer and kill him for the staff we need. We'll deliver it to Enther, and he agrees to give Arniel a warped soul gem we'll bring to Arniel. Arnie is happy to have it and mentions a great deal of work ahead of him. We'll ask him how that work's going since we last spoke to him 2 seconds ago, and he says it went terribly. He underestimated the heat transfer necessary and destroyed his only working model. Now he's at a loss. He explains the Dwemer were masters of magic in a way we can't conceive of. This ties into their greatest mystery, their disappearance. Arnie was intrigued by this since he was young. He's been working on this for years, and says he's trying to recreate the process. The dwarves were clever, tapping into and drawing power from the heart of Laron himself. Lacking the heart of a dead god, Arnie was attempting to use the warp soul gem we gave him, but he's not sure it'll work. The soul gem isn't enough on its own, and needs to be altered and purified. The dwarves had machines for this sort of thing, and Arnie's created his own dwarven convector. It partially worked, and the device was destroyed in the process. We ask if we can build another, and he says he doesn't have the time before asking for help in finding one that still exists. He'll teach us the spell to heat them, and tell us to place the gem inside and use the heating spell for 3 seconds. We'll also have to find multiple convectors, as the soul gems destroy the equipment in the process. With that, we'll look for a dwarven convector in any of the ruins around Skyrim. We'll head back to Mazult, as a convector is in a little closet nearby. We'll place the gem, heat it into a crispy Pop-Tart, then repeat the process in more convectors within Mazult, and then we'll look for a final oven before returning to Arnie. We'll give him the gem, and he excitedly says it's not perfect, but it'll work for testing. He will begin preparations, as the last thing he needs is arriving shortly. We'll have to wait for Arnie's quest to progress, and we'll randomly be challenged by a guy mocking our mage skills. He'll randomly start burning our legs, and we'll cut him down. I wish the game wouldn't do this in the middle of a city. Out in the world is way better for combat, and to avoid any collateral damage or unnecessary bounty buildup. Anyway, we'll return to Arnie, and he says Enther is refusing to deliver another item for his experiment. He begs us to do whatever it takes to help him with this. We'll talk to Enther again, and he says he doesn't have it. We'll mention payment, and Enther says he already overpaid for it and exclaims that he doesn't even have it. A courier was supposed to be bringing the item from Morrowind, but he never showed up. Enther didn't keep tabs on it, as he didn't know how important it was. We'll be directed to find the courier, and we'll head toward the cliffside between the Rift and Eastmarch. Along the way, we'll meet Telrav, who says bandits attacked and ransacked his cart. He asks for help to reach Nilheim, and we'll follow him into the camp, only to find it's a bandit trap set by Telrav. Then we'll proceed to blow up the bandits. Sounds like a fun phone clicker game. Bandit blow up. Free to play, but pay to win. Anyway, we'll return to our quest for courier loot and enter a Falmer cave, although this can vary. We'll cut down the blind ones and find a prisoner named Dirkethus. We'll help Dirk escape after looting Keening from the courier. It absorbs 10 points of magicka, health, and stamina with infinite charges after finishing Arniel's endeavor for good. We'll head outside and Dirk will thank us and walk off before we return to Arnie. We'll give him the dagger, and he's angry they didn't wrap it correctly. He's surprised we aren't dead from holding it, and we'll ask what the deal is with the dagger. He explains that Keening and his counterpart Sunder were used by the tonal architects of the Dwemer to tap into the heart of Lorcan. With this, Arnie has everything he needs, and it's time to test his theory. Then he explains his experiment and what we did up to this point, while adding that he doesn't have Sunder, but this should still work. He tells us to step back, and he draws Keening and whacks the soul gem, and nothing happens. Then he tries again, and nothing, and then he gets mad and hits it hard. Then he disappears, just like the Dwemer. I hope you found what you were looking for, Arnie. We learn a new spell allowing us to summon Arniel's Shade, which makes me wonder if all the Dwemer just became somebody's ghost pals instead of something more interesting. On the plus side, Arnie's Shade is indestructible, and has a large array of spells he can use to help you in combat, but the spell will expire after 60 seconds. Another plus is we have Keening to ourselves now, but let's move on. We'll interact with Tolfdir, who directs us to deal with a disturbance in a random area. He explains that the power of the Eye of Magnus was not fully contained, and has coalesced in certain parts of Skyrim. He suggests we use the Staff of Magnus to deal with this, and then we'll head out to the location of the disturbance. When we get close, we'll see magic anomalies like what we saw before. After killing a certain number of anomalies, we'll return to Tolfdir for a scaled amount of gold dependent on your level, except when the disturbance is in Winterhold, as they hate us being here. This quest is repeatable and is a good source of gold if you're a higher level and want some easy pickings. But that's about it. Now let's move on to another mage's problems. We'll talk to Onmund, and he'll mention he needs help with something private. He'll explain he traded something to Enther for something else he needed, but now he wants what he sold back, as it was an amulet that belonged to his family, and he regrets selling it. Even with his family's disapproval of magic and what Onmund wanted in life, they're still his family. He begs us to talk to Enther, and we'll see what we can do. Talking to Enther reveals that all his trades are final, and Onmund knew that ahead of time and went ahead with it anyway. We'll ask if there's anything we can do to change his mind. Then he recounts a story of someone looking to acquire a staff, and that someone sold it to him, but realized later that this individual might misuse such a staff. Short version is Enther sold a staff he wants back, and will give us the amulet in exchange for the staff. Hypocritical, even if he says it's through different circumstances. Then we'll be directed to a random location to get the staff back. If we had a high enough speech skill, we could have persuaded Enther to give the amulet back, but we're a violent sociopath with a history of blowing things up, so let's go do that. On the way to the staff's location, we'll find the Lover's Stone, which boosts all skill improvement speed by 15%. It doesn't work as well as the Mage, Warrior, or Thief stones boost their individualized skills, as they boost their trees by 20%, but a blanket bonus can be helpful to those using a variety of abilities. Anyway, we'll reach a location with an adventurer, and he says he's encountered enchanted spiders throughout this area, and that he's leaving. We'll take over from here and blast our way through more web spinners. We'll eventually find the Grand Staff of Charming, and we'll return to Enther. He flatly says it's good doing business with us, and we'll return the amulet to Onmund. He's grateful, and from now on can be used as a follower, which is a useful bonus for helping him. Now on to another apprentice. Now we'll help Brelyna with some experiments. She says we're all trying to become better mages, so she needs to test some spells on someone. We'll be her guinea pig. She mentions that she was worried she'd have to ask J'zargo, which tells you so much of his insufferable attitude. Anyway, Brelyna will cast a spell on us that makes us see green, with her saying we look green. She apologizes and explains it's not permanent. When we're back to normal, she asks us to come back as she's sure to get it right. It takes a few in-game hours for our grinchy state to fade, so we'll wait and return to her once our heart has grown 3 sizes. Once we return, she'll cast a second spell that transforms us into a cow, then a horse, then a dog, then back to normal. That stuff is ridiculous that an apprentice can do that. Given the situation, we both agree never to speak of this again, and go our separate ways with a leveled resist magic necklace as a parting gift, as well as Brelyna becoming follower potential. Now on to the last apprentice. We'll talk to the competitive kitty who says it's difficult to ask for help. When we ask what he needs help with, he mentions that Tolfdir likes us, and we must surely be powerful. He's working hard but cannot do this alone. He's worked hard to learn new spells and try new things to help him stand out, but he's trying so hard that he doesn't have time to test these new spells. If we help with the testing, this will make the learning faster. Then he says he'll give us some scrolls to test and report back with the results. We'll agree to help, and J'zargo gives us a flame cloak with a twist. It should be especially effective against the undead, and he'll give us 10 scrolls of this effect. In order to complete this quest, we'll need to test the spell against undead in 3 separate encounters. This means we need to find Draugr, skeletons, ghosts, or zombies to kill with this flame cloak he created. The drawback is you have to kill undead in 3 separate encounters, rather than 3 individual undead. This delays progression with this a little, but any ruin stuffed with Draugr can be found relatively quickly, so this shouldn't take too long to complete. Scrolls like this are used in both hands, and must be equipped like a weapon before use. Scrolls often take a long time to cast, but offer a valuable bonus relative to the time, either with an incredibly deadly or beneficial spell, or they summon something particularly powerful. In this case, we're just set on fire. Granted, J'zargo is an apprentice mage, but it says a lot about him that he gave someone else Flamecloak to use. We'll find some Draugr and activate the spell, which coats us in flames. They damage us as well as the undead, but a little restoration should be enough to offset the effect. Funnily enough, it persists underwater, which can be useful, but it fades quickly. A drawback to this quest is that using up all 10 scrolls before completing it will cause the quest to fail, so be careful with the scrolls or be willing to reload. We'll return to J'zargo with the results, saying they caused explosions. He awkwardly says that wasn't supposed to happen, before thanking us for our help, and now he is follower fodder if we so choose. Now we're going to go through a time jump to master level spells. When it comes to magic, there are special quests available once you get each skill to 100, and we're getting to them now, beginning with Destruction. We'll talk to Feralda, who says we've learned all she can teach, but that doesn't mean there isn't more out there. She'll mention she's heard of powerful magics lost to the ages, incredible spells that only the most skilled mages can master. Then she'll give us Power of the Elements, and when we read it, we get a cryptic message directing us toward the northern coastline. Northward, haunted, northern coastline, and south, Dwemer, live and toil, a simple place, a shield from draught. At this stand wield mage's craft, so fierce the sea will boil. Afterward, we have to find the location mentioned. This refers to Windward Ruins near Dawnstar. We'll enter the area to find a pedestal where we can place Power of the Elements. We'll shoot fire upon it, and a page will be added leading to the next location. Under Greybeard's morning shadow, at this northern watch, long lost, Nirn's hoary throat, does scrape the sky, here unleash a chilling cry, and gild this stand with frost. Now we'll repeat what we did before, but at the new location with the frost spell. We'll reach North Skybound Watch near the throat of the world, and blast the book on a pedestal to add another page. Over western river waters, by Karth bounded, south and north, on mountains sits, a humble crown, sky's wrath on this stand bring forth, to shake these snow caps down. Again, we'll reach a new location, Four Skull Lookout, find the pedestal, and per the remaining magical type, shock the book. Upon doing so, we can read the book to gain Firestorm, a master level spell, with Feralda selling the other 2 master level spells, Blizzard and Lightning Storm. The book is also completed at this point and respawns in your inventory after using it. It reads as follows: Elemental magic wielded, elemental thoughts displayed, havoc wrought as if for sport, efforts to impress fall short. I'll merely use a blade. Seeking study, wanting learning, recklessly aroused my rage. My pupil you would be, or more. Presume not of Shalador, you feeble, foolish mage. Quickly dispatched, worthless weakling, though this tome I gladly claim. A diamond in the rough, I find, shining gem from feeble mind. Now die, and curse my name. Fun stuff. Now I'll demonstrate Firestorm. You basically explode and engulf the immediate area in flames. Useful, but a big wind-up. Now we'll move to Master Illusion Magic by talking to Drevis. We'll learn we've gone beyond his teachings, but there is always more. He says knowledge of truly powerful illusion spells is here at the college, but hidden from those who might misuse it. Drevis will teach us a spell to discern things hidden from others, and with it, we will be able to acquire the texts we need. He asks us to bring all 4 to him, and he shall inscribe the spells for us. We'll be given the ability Vision of the 10th Eye, that we will cast for free for some reason. We're already a mage, especially by getting a magic skill to 100, so why not have it cost something? Either way, we'll cast it and walk around to find hidden books around the college that are invisible without the spell being active. They are written in a strange language, so thanks to Drevis for translating. Anyway, we'll find 1 book in each major area of the college, 1 in the Arcanium, 1 in the Hall of Attainment, 1 in the Hall of Countenance, and 1 in the Midden. Once all are found, Drevis will be glad to have the texts and gives us Hysteria, but we have to buy Call to Arms, Harmony, and Mayhem, the other Master Illusion spells. Nickel and diming us, Drevis, just like Bethesda these days. Anyway, Hysteria makes higher level enemies flee for 60 seconds. Call to Arms boosts combat skills by 25 points for you and allies around you for 5 minutes. Harmony makes higher level enemies stop fighting for 60 seconds, and Mayhem makes higher level enemies and friends attack anyone around them for 60 seconds. In short, these will be used more for fun rather than for strategic uses, but that's down to the situation. Before we move on, Drevis asks if we've seen Mirabelle around. He knows she's dead, but he thought she might stop in and say hello anyway. That's such a pitiful line given the context of her death and his interests. Now let's move on to Conjuration Mastery. Unlike the previous quests, we only need to be up to 99 Conjuration to take this mission. We'll talk to Finnis about learning more Conjuration magics, and he compliments our advancement. Then he mentions spells powerful enough to more permanently bind creatures to our will. He says there are risks, and there always are. Then he says we must summon and command an unbound Dremora. We'll begin by Finnis saying he needs to inscribe what we need into a sigil stone from an Oblivion Gate. We don't have one, and we'll need a Daedra to retrieve one for us. We will summon a Dremora and order it to bring a sigil stone to us, and Finnis will inscribe the spells we need. We'll ask why Finnis isn't doing this, and he says it's because he has no wish to be harmed. He explains that summoning an unbound Dremora isn't like other conjuration spells, as it will not simply do our bidding. We have to prove we're in control. Then he'll give us a spell to cast at the top of the Hall of Attainment, as he's prepared a place for us there. We'll head up to the roof of the Hall of Attainment and cast a summoning spell for the Dremora. We'll summon the Dremora and demand he obeys us, but he'll resist. We'll have to kill and resummon him a few times before he submits, and we'll send him to find a sigil stone. He'll disappear, and we'll resummon him to get our stone. The Dremora gives us the stone and references Lord Dagon being less than pleased at its loss. We'll deal with him later once we get to the Daedric quests. We'll return to Finnis, and he'll inscribe the stone, and we'll wait and talk to him again, where he says he's gained the knowledge he needed, and he gives us the stone along with the Flame Thrall spell. It's basically a beefier Flame Thrall that permanently exists once summoned until it's killed or another summon replaces it. Finnis will also sell other thralls like this, including the Dead Thrall, reanimating dead people, a Frost Thrall, and a Storm Thrall. We can also use the Sigil Stone to power the Atronach Forge. We'll grab some items to create an enchanted Daedric Gauntlet, showing what the Atronach Forge can do. Plenty of recipes are available online, allowing you to bypass finding the recipes in the world, which helps to avoid unnecessary requirements and improves replay value. Now we'll learn Master Restoration spells, again, starting with 90 Resto instead of 100. We'll talk to Colette, who loves our devotion to Restoration. She draws comfort in knowing that not everyone dismisses Restoration as most members of the college do. We'll be pointed to talk to the Augur, and when we mention we thought Colette was the authority on this, she says she absolutely is not. The Augur, on the other hand, was brilliant, and was especially gifted when it came to Restoration, but he's also particular who he shares that knowledge with. We'll need his approval, so we best be prepared. We'll talk to our favorite Sphincter of Light, and he mentions a test before we can learn more. We are to rely on our skill as a mage, not our belongings or scrolls or potions, only what lies within. We'll step into a light that removes all items from our inventory, and will be attacked by a growing number of ghosts, with only restoration spells being our saving grace. The ghosts cannot be harmed, so we must simply survive for a time limit. Any means can be used to win this: stealth, become ethereal shout, or just running around and avoiding death. As long as you're alive by the end, you'll get credit. When we pass the test, the Augur will gift us Bane of the Undead, a spell allowing us to set undead on fire and make them flee for 30 seconds. Another spell, Guardian Circle, is sold by Colette. Guardian Circle acts as a rune on the ground, but it heals the caster over time and causes undead to flee. All in all, not a bad spell to have, but movement is incredibly more useful than constant healing when we can have that and move freely anyway without it. Now let's wrap the master spells up with our alteration buddy Tolfdir. We'll ask for more, and he'll mention he's working on an improvement to Ebony Flesh, a spell boosting defenses, and he asks for help. We'll agree, and he says he needs dragon scales, but not just any dragon scales. Tolfdir's learned to use the essence of dragon scales, but they aren't potent enough. He did some research and discovered two things. He needs heart scales and a dagger called Kavozine's Fang. Basically, we need the fang to carve the heart scales off dragons. We can ask for details on the dagger, and Tolfdir will mention it was named after the dragon worshipped by this particular sect of the dragon cult. They were so fond of ritual sacrifices that the high priests spent a great deal of time sharpening the dagger. We'll ask about the scales he needs, and he repeats much of what was said before, and mentions only one heart scale should be enough for his research. The dagger was already picked up during the time skip by yours truly, as it can be found in a random dragon priest dungeon around Skyrim, so we'll go lizard hunting instead. We'll find a poor Lizzo and then kill it. We'll whack it afterward with Kavozine's Fang to gain the heart scale and return to Tolfdir. He says it's as he expected, with energies needing to be channeled back through the Nexus a second and third time. Then he says we deserve to use the finished spell he created. We're gifted Dragon Hide, a spell that reduces physical damage by 80% for 30 seconds, and Tolfdir now sells Mass Paralysis. Its function should be obvious. With that, we've wrapped up the College of Winterhold content, at least most of it. There are a few repeatable quests to look for books for Urag, picking up items for enchantment for Sergius, and purifying points of magical energy around the college for Drevis. I do apologize for not recording those, but there's not much there beyond what I just said about each of them, and after losing all my game files prior to scripting these videos, I hope you aren't too disappointed by the loss. With the College of Winterhold quest completed, we'll be moving on to the next major quest line. We'll be tackling different things in different videos, so stay tuned for more. There will be a link to my game commentary playlist in the description, so keep an eye on that if you want to watch my other stuff, or if you want to find where all the Skyrim videos will be. Hopefully it won't take me too long to make each video, and I should be able to tackle each one quickly. I will mention again that this was more of a walkthrough with critical commentary, as opposed to a full analytical breakdown or critique, but that is coming in the final video of this series. Keep that in mind, and hold on, I know it's taking a while to get there. For now, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and God bless.